Bravo 2, Foxtrot Juliet Delta.
KV2, Fox Juliet Delta, W4WWM, sound good here?
Okay, Will. Okay. I was just, I had to get everything set up. Make sure I was, go when they start the, round table here. Okay, so how do I sound over there? I'm on the, I'm on XLX, 212A, KV2 FJD.
You sound pretty good. Sound real good, no problem. Okay, we'll be standing by. I think getting ready to start in a few minutes, so go ahead and take a standby, W4WW.
Well, actually, it's going to start right now because the official Thursday night D-Star Roundtable clock is at 1901 hours here Pacific time, so we're going to get it going. And because it's just about 7 o'clock in Southern California, that means that the Thursday night D-Star Roundtable for September 7th, 2017 is underway. This is Mike in 6HKH, your net control. This roundtable is held every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific, 0200 UTC on XRF002 Alpha and a constellation of X reflectors, including XRF 310A, XRF 555 Alpha, and our multi-protocol X reflector XLX 212A. This is a technical net dedicated to D-Star and Open Digital Systems. It is a group effort. So to join the discussion, start a topic, or ask a question, just key up when I call for station. Please remember to not quick key or tailgate. I will pause regularly to let you key up, and I ask that participating stations do the same. We don't take formal check-ins or do a roll call, just to give us more time to talk D-Star and digital. Now, Net Control is online at our chat room. You can find it at roundtable.tech. That's roundtable, all one word, .tech. Just put that in the address field of your favorite browser, and it will take you to the D-Star Roundtable forum board where you'll find the shout box. You can use that real-time chat feature to contact me as well as to post information relevant to the topic at hand, such as links and quick notes. Now, we ask the stations offering a web address in conjunction with their presentation to post that URL or DNS in the shout box so that those listening now or later can link to the website or document in question, and you'll see that that's the case in a few of the shouts that have been posted in our chat room, again called the shout box. Roundtable.tech. Roundtable's all one word, .tech. Now, at the close of the roundtable, tonight's shout box is moved to the shout box history above the general roundtable discussion board. Podcast listeners get the shout box downloaded automatically. So even if we have a bunch of shouts or none beyond the 3 that are there now, we save them all, even if they roll off of your screen, and post them into the shout box history so those listening by recording or podcast or however can take a look at what we talked about and what's been referenced in the shout box during the course of this net. First up tonight is announcements, stations with announcements for the roundtable. Please key up. Well, didn't get a rousing response on that. Seems like announcements kind of come and go. I noted in today's ARR letter, but this is something that is more of interest to me in those in Southern California, more specifically the Inland Empire, and that is that the Citrus Belt Amateur Radio Club of San Bernardino, California, is hosting its 18th annual Route 66 on the Air special event, which begins September 9th and runs through the 17th. So it begins Saturday and runs through whatever day the 17th is. It's a pretty popular net. It remembers and reminisces about the historic Route US 66, which I guess most everybody understands it was the first major highway to link the West Coast with the nation's heartland. And it's a big to-do out here. A lot of TV shows and other songs and stories and events have been, dedicated or had Route 66 is the heart of it. It's a big biker common trip, but there's a lot of historic Route 66 signs out here. And anyway, you can go to the ARRL letter if you get that by email for today, or go to the ARRL website and find out more about it, especially the operating frequencies. Interestingly, the offer is digital, but it's in the low bands, and just a passing mention that some participating clubs may also use VHF and UHF repeaters. So nothing specific to D-Star. We're going to have to contact those boys and explain how it is. They're not too far away from me. I didn't know this was going on. But anyway, there's going to be a commemorative QSL card to celebrate the event. Certificates are available. And that's all the news I have to print for right now. So let's check again. If you have an announcement for the roundtable, please key up. And even with that long pause, didn't get anything. Another thing I thought I'd mention, or would like to mention, or going to mention, whether it's mentionable or not, and that is that you may have heard a net conducted in German yesterday, which is Wednesday to us here, which began at 1000 hours Pacific Daylight Time on the constellation, and that German language net was an X-reflector net, believe it or not, and that was on Australian reflector XRF022 Delta. The reason why you heard it on the constellation of X-reflectors here is that that X-reflector, which covers Austria, Switzerland, and Italy, is regularly linked to our XRF002 Alpha in order to carry this net and our constellation traffic to those countries, and those fine hams do show up from time to time. They do speak English, like many of them do, and we appreciate their participation in the digital system and our constellation. But that net, that X-reflector net, if you're interested, again, it's conducted in German, and despite all the advances in D-Star, we have yet to find a way to translate the language digitally. I'm sure that'll come down the line at some point. But anyway, it airs every other Wednesday, which the first Wednesday would be yesterday at 1700 UTC. Just for your D-Star entertainment and listening pleasure. Any more announcements? Because I don't have any. Please be it. All right. We're kind of an announcement less, but that's okay. So we usually proceed right to the Roundtable Forum Board and take a look at the Shoutbox post, and there are several. Particularly, there was a paper that K6KD posted in the current discussions category of the Forum Board, and there is a PDF file for download, and it's a fairly well done description, just as K6KD John described about the use of XLXF, XRF, and that. I hope this stops pretty quick. EMR gateway. And to get it, though, from the current discussions folder, you need to join, that is, sign up on the Roundtable Forum board. It's no big to do. You've got to put your call sign in there. That's really all you need, and prove that you're not a computer or a bot. And there you go. Plus, being signed up for the Roundtable Forum board gives you the ability to quickly determine what the latest posts are and post replies. Now, with Shoutbox, you don't need to sign up for that. And I get asked from time to time, well, I don't want to sign up because I don't want to get a bunch of stuff in the mail. Nothing happens. In fact, if you want to get our flyer and newsletter sent electronically, you have to physically sign up for it. It just doesn't come because you join the Roundtable Forum board. Anyway, we will talk about that topic later, so you may want to download it, and good reading now or later on. Also, I posted something that we are going to talk about, which is some of the new equipment from ICOM that came from the Tokyo Hamfest, which hopefully will get some discussion for the stations that either went or kept their eyes glued to the screen during the course of it and watched it much as we do Dayton, because a lot of new products came out that involve D-Star, either transmit and receive or just receive. So by clicking on that, it's another PDF download, but still, it's got pictures and descriptions. It's probably one of the best. And we'll pick that up in a moment. Otherwise, I didn't see anything else of a recent nature posted in any of the discussion categories or folders or boards. So feel free, though, to add anything or reply to anything that you like. And I'm sure that some of the new D-Star gear from ICOM will probably start a post someplace and add to it as more information comes out. Alrighty, any follow-up to last week's discussions? We like to take a pause for those that listen to the podcast or otherwise participate in the roundtable by listening to it later on. And of course, that sometimes prompts stations to say, hey, I wish I was live because I have some follow-up to this discussion or another, or I heard something that wasn't quite right and I'd like to fix it, or perhaps that you took charge in the discussion and would like to update it now. So anything coming out of last week's roundtable, we'll take you now. Please keep. Alrighty, nothing to talk about there. So, one of the topics that has been pushed around a bit, we talked about it fairly extensively last Thursday, concerning Hurricane Harvey and the use of amateur radio on an in-com basis. And it turned out that there just wasn't much going on that, well, that's not fair to say, let's put it this way, that there were some amateur radio efforts, but nothing D-Star. And more importantly, we talked about how ARRLs and ARESs and even the various Hurricane Watch amateur radio response groups response is archaic and outdated in the sense that passing traffic and the planning or helping with the public safety communications, filling in the gap for cell phone coverage really isn't necessary anymore. In fact, there's been a number of articles that have come out of an official nature concerning the review of how cell phone coverage went and Incom went. So in light of that, we have Hurricane Irma coming up, and interestingly, of course, we had to take a look at the ARRL letter and some other articles concerning amateur radio preparations, which they say are ramping up as Irma threatens or strengthens that to a Category 5 and is likely to hit the Atlantic coast here tomorrow, late tomorrow being Friday or early Saturday morning. So I thought I'd first ask if anyone had any comments concerning amateur radio's response or involvement in Hurricane Harvey since our discussion last Thursday. If you have something to add, we'd like to hear from you. Please key up. Alrighty, well, nothing seen or heard there. ARRL is doing just what it did for Harvey, and that is the Hurricane Watch Net was activated and off and running. Their primary frequency is 14th area, and also another reflector where we can all gather in a national emergency, or getting traffic in and out, or just listening to see what's going on, or where we can help. One or two would probably be helpful. I mean, just had one hurricane, and now there are three out just not ways away from us. So, wonder what is your thoughts on a single point of contact, maybe even DMR or linking, or a place with no matter what mode you connect in, but be able to participate digitally in event of a emergency. K4DJL, Montgomery, Alabama. Back to that. Fair enough. Well, let's see if anyone can give us some help and some thoughts. I'm sure that there are stations that are planning to listen in on the listen-in only channels and that are available. I think primarily from the VOIP Weather Net or VOIP Hurricane Net. And actually at www.voipwx.net, you can see their plans and again, it's Echolink, IRLP, and there's several conference nodes just for listening, depending upon location, and there's conference nodes and All-Star. This is the tiniest font I've ever seen on a website. Holy mackerel. I gotta get out 3 magnifying glasses to read this anyway. So, I was wandering away from saying stations. What do you think? Please, Kia.
W4WWM.
W4WWM. Go ahead.
Okay, Mike, I really appreciate the opportunity. But anyway, this is Will, W4WWM, here in Madison, Huntsville, Alabama. And figure we will check in and see how the roundtable with StarNet goes tonight. And of course, we just had a a net a couple of days ago, and that was one of the heaviest subjects of interest. And we were actually hoping that something could be started toward D-Star and DMR, bringing forth the fact that we're beginning to become more engaged in both digital modes. Yes, indeed, I understand that RRP is out there, and they've been hosting it for a while, and they also was able to linking other VoIP systems like EchoLink and Asterix, which I actually have all the module and modes right here in the shack, but just not turned on active. But I think one of the major things, even discussed even across some of the emails during the course of the week or a couple of days ago, is that first we need to get in touch with some of the emergency operation type units that within an effective area. And before the area becomes effective, we probably need to introduce ourselves ahead of time. So it may be too late for this year, but understand that if we get busy now and try to let them know that stations like we have here today might be of use, and here's what we can do. So I guess some kind of way we got to get started talking to the emergency operations centers. W4WWM, back to
net. Indeed, and as well as perhaps making our presence known to the well-established nets, such as the Hurricane Warning Net and the VoIP Weather Net, or VoIP Hurricane Net is actually what it's called. Anyone else? What do you think we should do? Is it something that D-Star should set up independently and just run off with the show, and if they want to participate or link up, fine, or do we need to talk to these groups and say, look, you're missing a golden opportunity to use D-Star reflector station? Please key up. Well, nobody else keyed up. Interestingly, Jeff VE6DV, who's net control of two of the D-Star related nets that air here on the constellation of X reflectors, was interested in said this, and he circulated an email that is relevant to this. And he sized it up as I have, that there doesn't appear to be any concentrated D-Star activity. Now look, are there reflectors that are up and running, or are stations in Florida and the East Coast and perhaps on the islands, do they have reflectors that stations that are affected by it are helping out or just are there? If they exist, I'm sure. I just don't know what they are, because there really isn't a clearinghouse for that information. But nevertheless, there was a suggestion by Jeff VE6DV to offer up one of the modules on the here on the constellation, and it would be one that people could connect to it and share information on the storm, maybe tune in for updates, and perhaps we could find a way to connect to the various official nets, especially if we can find a way to connect to the listen-only EchoLink or ILP nodes and modules, and that might be able to be a way of creating interest. Of course, you wouldn't be able to talk to those guys, and I don't think that we would ever think to step on their toes without their permission. And some of the folks here that were circulating and thinking about it thought that, look, right now is not a good time, as Will pointed out. And between, well, once hurricane season is over, perhaps we should contact them, try to partner with them. I mean, what's the harm? If they don't want us reporting or doing anything on D-Star via reflector, I guess that's their choice, but I don't know what the problem would be since they're fairly well limited to just observing and reporting, because there really isn't any communications work on a regular basis that I'm aware of that was put into play in Harvey or plans to be put into play in Irma. Of course, they're all standing by on low band, ready to go at a moment's notice to pass traffic. But I just don't see it myself. But then again, who am I to say? So, stations with some thoughts on this, please, Kia. Well, this is sometimes difficult to think about. I had some articles sent to me after our discussion about income, and I'm not going to prolong this since we talked about this at some length. But given that Irma is going to be fairly destructive, and well, let me start it this way. There's a report from the SEC that in the wake of Hurricane Harvey, there were fewer cell sites and TV stations off the air than anticipated. And actually, the biggest problem were radio stations and cable broadcast outlets where subscribers were without service. And this, according to the FCC's Disaster Information Reporting System. Of course, this is a voluntary industry-based method of self-reporting, but the greatest number of cell sites out of service for any significant length of time, although they don't tell me in this article what they consider to be significant length of time, was 3.8% in all of the areas affected by the hurricane in Texas. We don't have anything concerning loss of cell site in Louisiana. Now, CNET also discussed this. They did some work into it. And in an article dated September 3rd, 2017, and it's a pretty interesting article, and I frankly should have posted it so you guys could read it, and I will do that a little bit later. But cellular service, CNET reports, held up better during Harvey than in past storms, which was surprising to them in light of the scope and size of that disaster. Now, not every area's cell coverage did well, and there were some significant outages. They don't describe what that is, leaving perhaps at any given time tens of thousands of people without phone service. Of course, there's no indication how many of them were trying to put the phone into service, but the cell towers were up and running. Now, the biggest problem, as this article points out, is that they learned their lesson from Hurricane Katrina, as well as Superstorm Sandy, and other disasters, which in some instances, especially Katrina, pretty much wiped out both public safety and cell communication. But to only have about 4% of the cell sites going down is really amazing, when you think about it. The carriers learned lessons from the previous disasters. And anyway, the long and the short of it is that the loss of cell service is becoming almost not an issue. So the single biggest reason why cell phone service goes out in disasters is loss of power. Not every cell tower has emergency generators, but they've been running them in like crazy to Florida. All of the major carriers have portable cell towers. They're called COWS, COWS, which is cell sites on wheels, that can be deployed in areas where permanent cell towers sustain damage, not working. The cell providers were found to have recovered very quickly from the storms and deployed drones to see what's going on, and they're just more resilient. And same thing for public safety. And we talked about that last Thursday as well. And so where this all fits in, without continuing to bore you on, I'll post this particular article, the download to it in the chat box after the net, or maybe when there's a break in activity. Nobody knows that I left the golden roundtable mic, but in any event, where does amateur radio fit in, since their function, as they see it even today, is to replace lost cellular service and replace lost public safety service, as well as passing traffic message, which I'm not aware of a single instance where someone was asked to send a message out from Texas to some other place and didn't care how long it took to get there. So, any comments now that I've carried on for a bit? Anything that amateur radio should be looking at? Anything that has come to mind? And maybe perhaps what do you plan to do? Is there a good place to listen? Is that just about the extent of it? It's just a shame that D-Star continues to be left out. Of course, left out from doing what? Stations, please, Tia. K4 DJL, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mike. N6HKH, K4DJL. I think we have to, like I said on my net on Tuesday evening, we have to get back to the roots of the things. We have to participate in our county EMA drills. We have to let people know, hey, we're here if needed. We're on standby. We have to demonstrate our abilities on D-Star and other modes that are coming along and growing. And we have to be able to cross-communicate. And in doing so, I think we will keep ourselves in the game, so to speak, and keep ourselves needed. Regardless, and it's great that they were able to bounce back and had mobile cell sites that they could deploy and things like that. And I guess we learn as we go, but I think there's still a place for amateur radio in a disaster. So that's my spiel, and I'll let it go with that. And hopefully you had enough time to make that post, so we'll see. This is K4DJL.
W6.
Hey, I'm not that fast, but no, I'll get it up there. Unfortunately, I've got to find the URL because it printed and I didn't get a header, so I'm going to have to locate it. It may not be postable until, maybe in the shout box after the net. It'll be up, though, for your reading because the shout box is up 24/7. We say howdy ho to W6KD. Go ahead.
Yeah, hey Mike, good evening. I was looking at the forecast track on Irma, and if it's anything like what they have forecast right now, it's going to be an ugly show for Florida. It looks like it's going to hit about Miami, right on the tip of the peninsula, and cruise right up the center of the Florida peninsula. And still at hurricane strength, passing Jacksonville, going north towards Savannah, Georgia. So, if that forecast is true, or holds true, there's going to be a wide swath of central Florida that's going to get the brunt of the winds, and the entire peninsula is going to get clobbered with the other effects. So it's entirely possible. Cellular systems are going to get knocked over left and right on the peninsula, and of course, you look at the geography there. One of the things that happened to Katrina is Katrina took I-10 out, because of the piers and the bridges and all that stuff that marshes in Louisiana, et cetera, and so they weren't able to get a lot of emergency stuff into the affected area because all the roads were out. Well, if you look at the peninsula, if you look at it from a logistics perspective, getting into Florida, if the roads are messed up and flooded and trees down all over the place, that makes getting into the center of the peninsula pretty tough. And so it might be interesting. But the bottom line though is that ham radio is 100 years of tradition unaffected by 100 years of progress. And if you really want emergency communications for yourself, you're far better served to have a global satellite phone or an inReach satellite text communicator or a HughesNet satellite internet service, just a regular cellular dish. All of those can be protected and then used immediately after a storm comes through, regardless of cell infrastructure, regardless of internet infrastructure, etc. So let me change hands. So anyway, the idea that large swaths of or large numbers of people should be dependent on Johnny the Ham sitting in his house passing ARRL radiograms. It's baloney. It doesn't work like that anymore. And for us to delude ourselves into thinking that is really kind of we're at an anachronism in the modern world of technology when we try to hold ourselves up to being the last stand when it comes to emergency communications. There are so many better ways of getting communications out in a disaster than ham radio. If you know where to look, Anyway, I like being a ham, but I don't hold myself out to be a hero. I don't think we should hold ourselves out to be heroes for doing something that anybody can do by going down to the local REI store and buying themselves an inReach or global sat phone. If you're worried about emergency communications, that's the best thing going. Unaffected by any storm on the planet. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I have to play the devil's advocate here because it's not just a D-Star thing; it's a ham radio thing. We're a hammer looking for a nail in that regard. Back to the net, W6KD.
K6K.
All right, Bob, thank you. And I need to note to everybody that, in fact, the D-Star Roundtable board is down, Pro Board is down, and so there are some posts that I wanted to get to, but can't get to it now for the next topic. Hopefully it'll come back up. Shouldn't be down for too much longer, but it's not just you. So, and K6KD recognized. So, Bob, when you think about it, all of the Aries activations are meant to really help out with public safety communications and information. Well, there's hurricane-proof bunkers of both the National Weather Service and all kinds of communication capable providers of public safety. I'm certain there's some small towns that use the repeater and analog, and they may just be down, but the majority of them, they're ready. And I just don't see public safety communications going out. So if that leaves cellular, how would amateur radio, even if they could respond with everything, including D-Star, how would they help out when the cell phone towers are down? I mean, I don't think there's a plan for that, and perhaps they don't even think about that. I'm thinking out loud. I appreciate you chiming in. K6KD. Hello, John. Welcome. Go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, Mike and Annette. Oh, sorry, I got my other radio. I was just going to comment on the Pro boards. It looks like it's a pretty widespread outage because even their support board is down. So hopefully that, with it being widespread, our board, that'll get prompt attention. So anyway, the only other thing I'll say is that most of the cell phone towers don't go down, or they do a pretty good job replacing them, just in response to what you said. Anyway, back to net, K6K.
All right, John, thanks. Yeah, it's too bad because, unless you downloaded the Handfair document and or screen snap some of K6JM's posts, they're lost for now. And of course, so yeah, if a web server or cloud service, if their support board goes down, I think, the curtains at least for a while. That's pretty significant. Usually those things are the ones that stay up. I mean, if you're going to report it, you can't. All right. Well, we like ProPort. I'm sure it'll be back pretty soon. All right. Any further comments on Hurricane Irma? Perhaps somebody has some suggestions on where to listen as far as reflector activity. Perhaps somebody has more current information about exactly what ARES and the other nets that have been activated are going to do, other than provide, I guess, status reports of the hurricane. But it's not clear what they're going to be doing, other than perhaps observing and reporting. But then again, as I've been watching the news, they want everyone out of there, because it's just going to make a beeline down the middle of the state, apparently. So the hams are going to be left behind? I'm not really certain how this is going to work. All right, anything further on this, please, Kia? EOD? All right, we had some doubling activity going on. I have K4DJL, any other stations that also keyed up. Please key up again. KE0AYJ, back from repairs. KC9EOD, thank you for keying up again. I caught the last three as it went across the screen as a double, not your fault. And KE0AYJ, welcome to all. First to K4DJL. Go ahead.
All right, yeah, well, there's a lot of new technology and different things, and people are doing different things, but I still think we have a place. I don't own a sat phone. Hadn't thought one in a while. That's kind of pricey as far as usage goes, but I guess in emergency maybe you get a break. I don't know. You just have to find out. But if needed, we still should, I think, be ready. Thank you. That's it for me. K4DJL back to this.
Well, yeah, and I can't disagree. I mean, if you had the capability, it's just that I was looking for, okay, what does someone with the capability of setting up an extensive station do? Who do they call? Where do they go? How do they get involved? And is it areas and it's a secret? And it's not even clear from their sites where they're going to be and what they're going to do. They just have the frequencies, and that's about it. Oh, looks like, hey, the Pro Boards is back up. Phew, thank you. Well, we'll see how it goes. And anyway, if somebody does find a reflector or other place where there's traffic being handled, or, well, no, that wouldn't be the case. But anyway, stations reporting, well, yeah, you never know. Just post it on the shout box, and we'll all keep our eyes on it, because I'm certainly certain most of us are going to be keeping an eye on this storm and watching what's going to be going on. Next, we say hello to KC9EOD. Thanks for being with us. Go ahead.
Good evening there, Mike and everybody. This is KC9EOD. Jim, located in Columbus, Indiana. Only thing I can kind of add to your all your scenarios here that you've got going tonight is we had here in southern Indiana, we don't have a lot of tornadoes. We have every now and then we'll get a tornado here because of the hills. We're kind of lucky versus the northern part of Indiana. But anyway, we had one this past summer. I actually come through my backyard. Took my last tree out of my backyard, and anyway, one about 5 years ago was through the same area and took part of the tree down. I got the rest of it took down this time. The first time took my roof off my house, but anyway, this time no damage there. But I will have to say this time when the tornado came through, we lost power and everything. With the exception, we had cell phone service and also we had internet service because I had my internet on a battery backup and I had internet through the whole thing, and the electric was off for a couple of days before they got it back on. But we still had the internet and the cell phone service, and I know most of our cell phone towers withstand tornadoes pretty well without being taken out here in the southern part of Indiana. Most of them are cement and very well built, not real high, but very well built seem to be anyway. And my other thing, anybody that wants to listen to any kind of traffic or anything on the hurricane, it's sometimes kind of chaotic, but there's a cell phone app. Also, you can use it on an iPad or an Android tablet or even on a computer called Zello, if nobody's mentioned that. Zello. You get it in either one of the app stores, and just search for groups with about hurricanes, Hurricane Florida, all that kind of garbage on the search on it, and you'll find a lot of different groups that are going to be on Zello, and sometimes it's pretty chaotic, but there's a lot of traffic that goes on about hurricanes and storms and everything else there. So anyway, probably Echolink's probably the best for the hurricane watches out of all of them, or IRLP, but that's just my 2 cents worth. So thanks for letting me talk tonight, and I will turn it back to you there, Mike. KC9EOD.
Well, we appreciate your 2 cents. Yeah, there was a posting in the shout box last Thursday about Zello, Zello, and I investigated it, not knowing a lot about it, and come to learn that during Harvey, it was, as you described, very busy, very active. You treat it more like listening to a police scanner, although it's not the same. It's on your cell phone, but you can search for groups, and for example, the Cajun Navy, as they called them, was using Zello exclusively to dispatch boats, report on needs for rescues, and passing on things to first responders where they didn't want to get in the middle of it. And it apparently was pretty interesting listening, but that's just about it, because you're not authorized to transmit on it, but it's just, I don't know how to describe it. It's just a two-way, but a very clear digital two-way on that you can put on your cell phone or Android or iOS app. Anyway, you guys can look it up. It's it's a way of not have I don't know how to describe it. Between a toy and a non-licensed two-way radio of sorts. Anyway, it's there and it's interesting. Thank you, Jim. KE0AYJ. Hey, Andy, go ahead.
Oh, everybody's talking about it. It's KE0AYJ. I had to do some repairs on the pins on the DV Mega to get it to work, and it's working now. Finally had some spare time, and hello, everybody from Orlando. And I've got 40-mile-an-hour winds outside, so we're watching and waiting. I've been installing telemetry links, satellite telemetry links down here for NOAA and FEMA. So anyway, it's gone crazy down here. Zello is a lot of information flying on there, a lot of good channels. basically they're getting coordinated for Friday night, and Saturday morning for the evacuations and stuff that are going to be taking place and rescue efforts. So that clues you into a lot that's going on. Other than that, been having nightmares, I guess, with getting out of Texas and getting my merry self back up to Indiana, and then only to be dispatched by FEMA for Florida. So we're playing the game, getting it done, and everything's basically coming together pretty good. I think they're more prepared for this one than Texas was for Harvey. So we'll have to just wait and see. Landfall is coming up pretty quick, and we'll just see what develops in. It's diminishing a little bit, but it's still going to be pretty nasty. And back to net.
Well, that's pretty interesting. So you bail out in Texas, and now you're preparing for war in Orlando, that is Florida. Well, hopefully you'll find some time to, if you stay there. I think Orlando is a safe place to be. Actually, the Walt Disney World Resort is a good place to hide during a hurricane. They've got that down to a science. Anyway, hopefully you can think to key up on the Constellation and let us know what's going on, and good luck with your efforts in helping out NOAA and FEMA. So appreciate you being with us. All right, anyone else before we move on? Please key up. All right, nothing seen or heard. Well, I wanted to talk about the Tokyo Ham Fest because to me, there's always excitement coming out of there, and sometimes it's even more exciting to see what's being demoed as prototypes or designs, for that matter. Sometimes new products are released. It's a fun event. It probably has more video than any other event I've seen. And I think every booth had a streaming channel. But most important was some new stuff from ICOM. And now that the shout box that is the V-Star Roundtable Forum board is up, you'll see a link if you want to kind of look along and read along with us from what I thought was a fairly well done and brief report from FB News, which is a Japanese website, and this download has been translated to English. Actually, good English. It's not a bad one. And probably the most interesting thing, there's two of them really, is the concept model IC9700 that is replacing the 9100 and has a lot of interesting features on it. I'd like to think someone's taking a look at that and given it a thought. Maybe you were there. And that download has close-up photos of the new ID31 Plus, and hey, they got 3 colors. So the demo of the terminal mode and access point mode probably went over fairly well in Japan. Anywhere else, I think it would probably not go over so well. And as K6JM has helped us understand in his 2 posts in the shop box, I strongly recommend you take a look at them, about the access point mode and access point and terminal mode. Terminal modes. Let me see how they describe that exactly. Yeah, terminal mode and access point mode functions. So, take a look at that radio, the 9700, and it's pretty tiny. It's going to make carrying around the 9100, which is a portable, believe it or not, you can rip your arm off and weight, is going to be replaced. And there's other stuff that's new, but those 2 radios are the topics of interest. And those of you who know more about those radios than I do, please key up. Well, not too many people excited about it. I don't see the purpose in reading out loud to you the comments. on the IC 9700. Other than it covers the same bands as the 9100. It has, digital data mode on D-Star and DV mode. It's popular radio for those that like to operate DV on low bands. It's got a satellite mode again. Actually, it's just smaller. Seems to have a color screen. Fewer buttons to push, which means that probably a computer has to be plugged into it most of the time. It's their all-in-one radio. And that is right now in, what do they call that? This quote, it should be a very popular model if it is released. So it's just a concept at this point, but it's a pretty looking concept. And the new ID31 Plus, which I don't understand that at all, was shown. So, any comments about ICOM continuing to insist that terminal mode and access point mode are important functions in their D-Star capable radios? And any comments about taking an old radio and making it new by putting some color bars around the LCD screen and adding terminal mode and access point mode to that radio as well, which essentially is useless outside of Japan. Stations, please key up. Well, I'm just about as excited as you guys are. Any comments on K6JM's postings? And in the shout box, take a look at him. He makes some important points. Anyone wish to quibble with K6JM, be careful. He's liable to fight. No, I'm just teasing. We all accept criticism and corrections and comments for, with good intent and no ill will. So, anybody think that, is Jim right? Was he wrong? Are you guys excited about access point terminal mode outside of Japan? Stations, please key up.
W4WWM.
W4WWM, go ahead.
Okay, I'll take a shot at it. I think it might be of some use. I wouldn't really put it down. It's another piece of the D-Star mode that is really, really, really not used here in the U.S., but actually can be used nicely. Actually, if given a chance, if those out there get out there and really, really learn how, once they set up the access point or the terminal mode point, basically to use the rig's new feature like the routing. I do it all the time. I like to, I know a lot of people say, well, it might be a little dangerous, but if you set it up correctly and do things like routing to link reflectors, or I know some don't really like to do that, but in an event, it can be used and used effectively. Provided the person that's doing it really understand the total concept of it. I may be a little bit off target, but I think the newer rigs can have a use here in the United States with some of the new features such as the terminal mode access and the routing. This prevails with the routing feature. W4WW.
All right, well, I appreciate that, and I know that there's a posting by QuadNet 2. Well, I'm not sure who that is. Actually, if you guys would use your call sign, I'd appreciate it. You don't have to sign in or anything, and I'm not sure. Maybe that's Will. But anyway, he said in this post on the shout box that there's a place for the IC4100 for routing, as Will just pointed out. And, well, I bet he typed this, because you can build routes to reflectors using a StarNet server. And so that particular application, I don't think has been brought to the roundtable's attention. I haven't thought of it in that way, but there's a point to that. Stations, please, Kia. Well, nothing heard. I think Jim's point, K6JM, is that, look, nobody's saying don't buy the radios. I mean, except for the ID31 Plus. I have a 31 here, and I'm staring at it and then staring at the photo in the Ham Fair News download. And except for the color band around the antenna base and around the screen, because they're all black radios, I don't see any difference at all. Like, I haven't even found anything that's even mildly different. So all they're doing is adding terminal mode and access point mode to the radio. I mean, the only good thing about it in this single band radio is that, and it's 430, 440 only, is that they're going to continue to make it. Hopefully that means that batteries and accessories will be available. But if the price goes up on this new radio, and if you believe, as I do, that it's not because they put a color band around the screen, it's because of these new features. And are those features something worth paying more money for? If you want the radio because you'd like to have it, because it's new, and they have Bluetooth, although I don't think Bluetooth is part of the bargain with the ID31 Plus. At least nothing indicates that from what I can tell. But, the radios are new, and there are other things available, but it's, there is a price that you have to pay for it. Well, I just was looking at the new portable R30. That is pretty trick. Looks like a old style cell phone. Looks like a DMR radio of sorts. Of course, the big thing with the R30 is I depart from this a bit, is that it, as a successor to the IC R20, is it has additional digital modes built in and simultaneous two-band reception. It's a super wide band receiver, portable receiver, with a pull-out antenna. I am pretty confident that excludes, of course, cell phone coverage. So, stations like KC9SIO says he's considering the 4100. It'd be interesting to learn why you would be considering that radio. Not a lot of them are out, but you can certainly buy them. So, anything further about these new radios or about the two features that we seem to, not find fairly, that for which we find some use, but not a lot, and certainly not for their intended feature. Stations, please key up.
W4WWM.
W4WWM. Your turn. Go ahead.
Yes, indeed. That is my post, QuadNet 2, admin for the QuadNet network. I did say, well, I should have put my call sign there, but then I went back right quick like to try to edit it. Just haven't figured it out just yet. So eventually it'll get changed. I may have more than one user's name. So I didn't want to do that to create all those users names until I really figure out how it goes. But anyway, I actually was about to make a deal with buying a 4100 just this past week, and I was going to go ahead and get in there and try to demonstrate how well one can use that function and hopefully surprise everyone. But my deal didn't go through at Gigaparts as I had planned it for, and so maybe the Gigaparts is only about 3 miles down the road from my location, if you heard of Gigaparts. But anyway, I probably sometime this week I go down there and try to make another deal with get the best price of the radio, and plan to put the 4100 in the mobile so I can start doing exactly what I posted, and just of course with my own X reflector, and maybe which I'm already doing, and may not need to do some of those other extra things that they're talking use. But I understand you got to register it, I guess, on a terminal, and then once the routing feature becomes available, I guess I can use it as I've been using all the rest of my radios in the routing feature with D-Star radios. I won't be using call sign routing. I'll be using basically what's called the group routing, better known as the StarNet routing. You're doing the same thing with DMR. You're routing, and you're routing into a talk group, and so I can we have a 15-channel route server that we can set up routes to route into particular DCS reflectors or XRF reflectors, as I have one set up for mine, and it works pretty good. It logs in, and you can make it log out. So, but anyway, one just really got to understand the method of routing and how to make it work for you. And I think if more get that radio and trying to do more routing, they might be surprised. W4WWM.
Well, you never know, and certainly, well, thanks, first of all, for owning up to your QuadNet 2. I'm maybe the only person in the world that doesn't recognize you, and you're fairly well known in this business, and the QuadNet 2 is yours. And you can't, unfortunately, edit your shouting as name, so, and you don't have to worry about it, but next time you post, just, because you don't have to register, well, anyway, just use your call sign and instead of QuadNet 2, and that way we'll know who posted it and whatnot. So if you do get that radio, please come back and give us a lesson. We'd like to see that put to use. Frankly, I think I could rest better if there was a legitimate purpose to these access point terminal mode features other than supporting call sign routing connections in the sense that we understand them, where that's really not good. And we've gone over why just generic call sign routing is unacceptable, but what you described could very well be, and it's a capability we may not have thought about, and we need to. So, if you get that radio, let us know. Anyone else have any comments on, Tokyo Ham Fair? It doesn't have to be specifically about what we've been just now talking about. Any thoughts about the radios? I suspect that it's going to be a long ways away for those of us who would like to unload their 9100s, because they're really big. But that is my favorite bass. It worked great. And this new smaller job is just what, I think that I might be one of the first out the door that I'll be lining up on the block to perhaps pick that up. Well, we'll have to see. And it wouldn't just be for the Color Spring. Enough from me. Anything further? Handfest, Tokyo, New Radios, ICOM, Access Point, Terminal Modes, Call Sign Routing, QuadNet, StarNet. Please key up.
K4DJL.
K4DJL, go ahead.
All right, thank you again, sir. Appreciate it, Mike. N6HKH. I also own a 9100, but I also enjoy D-Star HF on the weekends. So it's going to be hard for me to part ways with that. I like the idea of the 9700 and dual receive. That's a nice feature. But again, no HF, so D-Star HF. And maybe when they come out with that version, we'll look at upgrading. But for right now, I've got 1.2 and, and all that already installed. So, and it's working quite nicely. Yeah, I'd like to have it, but we'll wait till they add from DC to Daylight. K4DJO.
Well, I think the IC9700 is going to have oh, I see the point. This just escaped me. It's not a low band radio. That explains the size. I just in my mind thought that this is just a new version of the 9100. It isn't. 2 meter 441.2 and operates in all the standard modes plus DD and DV on D-Star. Wow. Well, then you don't want to get rid of your 9100. My apologies. That's my fault for not reading it carefully enough. That explains why it's a small little radio. So we're going to have to stick with the 7100 to do DV on HF if that's what you like to do. Unless I'm really, really tired and can't remember what features my radios have. So, I will probably pass on anything further in this regard. Well, as you know, 4K transcoding just keeps moving right along. It's still in test mode, and I thought that as we progress this net and its constellation of X reflectors towards making them DMR ready, DMR will be the first digital mode available through 4K transcoding, that there's a question that's come up. And it's an interesting one. So, there are XLX reflectors, and there are XLX reflectors that will need to be DMR ready. And it would be interesting to know how to tell if an X reflector is also a DMR reflector, given that it doesn't seem to perform any different other than handling DMR. And the dashboard, I don't believe, is going to reflect that. So I thought it might be interesting to learn. All right, so you guys that, want to get on the 4K transcoding bandwagon and would like to put your DMR, inexpensive DMR radio to work, or like to show others how to do it, and you're going to connect your hotspot or device, access device, to a DMR XLX reflector, how would you know which ones are ready to go? And I thought I'd pick on K6KD to help us out with this. What do you think, John? K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, well, if you have a particular XLX reflector and you know you have the dashboard, you can see if the dashboard will have the version of the XLX software, and if it's version 2, which is the latest, but I say probably in general 2 or later, then that reflector is capable of handling DMR as well as D-Star. If you go to the paper that I have posted in current discussions on the last page, I have a link that will download a list of version 2 capable or version 2 XLX reflectors, which will handle DMR. Neither the dashboard nor that list indicates which reflectors are transcoding capable, so that will probably just have to be advertised separately. Back to net, J6KD.
That's it. You just have to figure it out ahead of time and just know that it is capable, and that's the end of the day. Is that right? J6KD, go ahead.
Well, what I was describing is a way of knowing if the reflector is capable of DMR, and that is by looking at the version on the dashboard or the list that will download the version 2 capable reflectors that are on the last page of that document that I posted. But there's no way of either from that list or from the dashboard knowing if there's transcoding. That at least at this point, that's something that would be advertised separately, apart from the dashboard or that list. Back to you, Mike.
All right, fair enough. So did you want to perhaps just give a quick overview of your, I don't know quite what to call it, an article about XLX and XRF reflectors DMR and use with DMR gateway? Certainly, we don't need to have an extensive report because it's downloadable and it should be downloaded and read. It is an excellent and well-written piece of work, but perhaps you can give a quick insight as to why you posted it in the first place. K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, well, the reason I posted it in the first place is I was helping out on another forum, actually, a Facebook group that supports the Pi-Star image, and I don't use that image myself, but it's a good image. It's kind of bulletproof. They really work to make what could be complicated, try to make it as uncomplicated as possible, and they provide excellent support on their Facebook group. So I kind of appreciated that because that helps, currently helps and will help people who participate in our nets as well. So most of those people, I think, probably have a DMR background and don't know a whole lot about D-Star. So I was answering questions about XLX and DMR gateway, and the developer of the Pi-Star who runs the Facebook group asked me if I would start a thread to instead of just answering random questions, if I start a thread to explain some things. So I did, and then more people came in asking other things. So I created another thread, and the thread's got close to 70 responses. And then somebody came in and suggested that it would be, they didn't want to impose, but it would be good if I could take the information that was in all those threads and post it and create a document. So I thought it was a reasonable thing, so I did, and then I created a document here. So that's the long and short about how it came about. Maybe back to you first, and then I can give kind of a real brief overview of it.
Alrighty, back to you for that brief overview.
Okay, I guess that was kind of a useless back and forth. Anyways, what it does is it gives a brief history of XRF and XLX. There were people that thought that the XRFs were going away, which they're not. And they have, I described how they first came about as an open source alternative to the legacy D+, because it was very important to people to not have to go to a central authority to get permission to stand up a reflector or to get permission to use a reflector. And that's what started the XRFs. And then I described how the XLXs came about and some differences, some of the strong points of each. The XLX strength is the multi-protocol, including DCS and now DMR. The strength of the XRF is extremely flexible linking options, and that the fact that they can link together means that you have a hybrid infrastructure that has the best of both. It has the multi-protocol and multi-mode capabilities of the XLX and the extremely flexible linking options of XRF. So then I described what XLX DMR is, how that relates to D-Star, talk groups, modules. Then I go through and describe how that is programmed using DMR Gateway, which I've mentioned in the past on this net, that most people who have a DMR radio are probably going to want to be able to access Grandmeister and possibly DMR Plus in addition to the XLX. And the DMR Gateway provides the capability of accessing all of them by just changing talk groups. In fact, there's a new version of DMR Gateway that's still in the experimental state that will support up to 999 XLX masters as opposed to the current DMR Gateway, which is limited to 2. So, and then I describe how the radio. I don't describe how you program your radio, but I describe what talk groups are used for what talk groups should be programmed into the radio to use the XLX DMR. And then I have some resources at the end, which include the roundtable.tech and inviting people to participate in this roundtable. So I had to put a plug in for that. Back to Ned, K6KD.
All right, John, thank you. We appreciate you taking the time to lift and update this from the post in the Yahoo group. And it's really going to help those that want to participate with port key transcoding, or for that matter, any XLX DMR repeater. And the history is just as important. Using DMR Gateway is going to become very important. And the process of in an XLX network connecting to a talk group that's using a DMR XLX reflector is useful and important. So for those of you that have downloaded this document, of course you can read it at your leisure, but if you have taken a look at it and have any questions for K6KD, we'll take you now. Please key up.
W4WWM.
W4WWM. Go ahead.
Okay. Thanks much, Mike. In 6HKH, W4WWM here in Madison, Huntsville, Alabama. Yes, indeed. I've downloaded the document and read it over twice, as stated earlier in an email, John. It's an excellent document, and I was really, really glad to get it. It definitely make it more understandable in the concept of use concerning the types of protocols being used as they are. And I do have 2 stations that are connected to K4 DJL and another station there in Teaneck, New Jersey, KB2 FJD. And they are very good hams that would love to use products such as that, or understand a product such as that, where we could, I can see where we could use it with taking REF, linking REF up to XLX as well as XRF, and being able to communicate on the Alabama D-Star net. Once we've proven that it could be effective. I think one of the major questions, and this would be a very, very interesting question for John, is that the data part of it, the slow data part of it, will pass. My understanding is that it will pass the call signs identified both by D-Star and Gateway, correction, and DMR. Is that correct, John? That'll be a very important aspect of the application as it's being used when it's linked to reflectors such as an REF and XRF and XLX in the mix. Over to you, Net Control, W4WW.
K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, well, you know, the one thing I have not, well, I've done it, but not regularly linking. You know, when you say REF, I think you're probably referring to the legacy D plus REF reflectors, and assuming that's, you know, as opposed to an XLX reflector, which is addressed as REF, or which can be addressed as REF. I don't know the REF software, but my understanding is that since REF, since D plus, you know, the legacy D plus reflectors are not designed to link, you cannot initiate an outbound link from an REF reflector. The same thing is true with XLX. Now, XLX can interlink with other XLXs, but an XLX cannot initiate a link with a different reflector. So, the way to do it would be the good old XRF, the DXRFD reflectors can initiate links with both XLX and with REF. I don't know if it's commonly done. I had the impression that it was kind of frowned upon to link to an REF reflector that you might get banned or your house might get burned down. So that is how you would link. But I don't know if, since it's not something that I would admit to doing, I don't know if the slow speed data goes between REF and XRF, because if you just do it with the dashboard, the D plus dashboard shows that message, that comes from the slow speed data. Well, I should say most of the D plus reflectors don't show it very well, because most of the D plus dashboards don't work very well if they put in TUD and put in one person's message with another. But if that were happen to be linked to an XRF, which doesn't show the message, so I don't know if it gets past to XRF, but that would be something to try. Back over to you, Will.
Okay, John, real good. Yes, that's been a question, one of our questions that been brought to the attention, because basically not necessarily the dashboard, but I guess as the radio passes as the D-Star radio passes the slow data on the display screen, it can be recognized there. That might be the point where it may be acceptable, but who knows right now? These are just basic things we're thinking out loud that we'd love to see. Yes, we know we know the history. We were there doing the function of the passing of the data, and the reason why the guy did not the author did not want the data to be passed over. At first it was, but something happened. We probably don't need to go into at that point. I remember. And was actually part of what was happening during that time frame. But nevertheless, there may be a change in time as yes, the XLX reflector can be defined as a, well, what I'm understanding, as a RF reflector in some sort of way. I'm not too sure. Still trying to figure that all out with the new advancement of the XLX reflectors. But yes, yes, I know all about. Actually, I know really a lot of. Well, I know enough about the XRF that it did have that linking feature in it. I remember when it was built, and yeah, well, the key thing is between the two or between the three was hopefully that it would pass that data so it can be seen on the. Well, two features: passing the data that it can be seen on the screen, as well as the linking feature, which will be the. As we know, the XRF will be the best linking feature to it, and I think if we could talk and get authorization, we have a open avenue towards something like that. Not sure totally, but it's just something would be really neat if we could have the REF D plus reflector communicate with the XLX and the XRF during this time only with the transcoding, and really see how it really works. But anyway, just a question. Appreciate the answer, John, and we'll turn it back over to the next control, W4WW.
All right, appreciate the discussion, guys. So, anyone have any questions or thoughts? I would strongly recommend that you download the paper. It's in the current discussions category, we call it a folder, and it's on the landing page up near the top. You can't miss it. It says current discussions, and I think it's the first document up. Paper describing XLX, XRF, and use of DMR gateway, especially if you want to join in on the fun and excitement of 4K transcoding as that progresses. Anything further, station, please key up.
K6KD.
K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, well, I just wanted to mention to Will that if there's an REF reflector, let's say a friendly REF reflector, you can initiate a link to that, completely from the XRF, and then from that same XRF, you can initiate a link to an XLX with transcoding. And I haven't tried it with the REF, but I'm sure that I'm sure it'll work end to end. The transcoding. Let's say somebody is linked to the transcoding module on DMR, and that module is linked to another XRF reflector. From the XLX perspective, it's just a DXtra gateway, and that the XLX will convert the DMR with the transcoding server will create a D-star stream from the original DMR, and if it's linked to an REF, it's just a D plus connection, and the REF reflector, which doesn't recognize links, the legacy REF reflector doesn't recognize links, it just thinks that there is a D plus gateway connected, and I'm quite sure it'll be passed via D plus gateway, because the XRF is capable, obviously, of simultaneously dealing with D extra gateways as well as D plus gateways. So I'm quite sure it'll work, and maybe offline we can talk about how, probably more detail than we want to talk about here, but the actual mechanism of linking an XRF to REF, it can be done completely from the XRF. Back over to Net from K6KD.
All right, John, thank you. At this point, I think it's a good time to open up the roundtable to questions and perhaps some topics that you'd like to have discussed. I don't know if we can start them tonight, but we'll certainly think about them, and if not, we'll try to put them together for next Thursday. But if you have a question based upon D-Star or the Open Digital Systems, if a question came to mind from what you've heard thus far tonight, if you just jumped in after listening to a recorded session from perhaps one of the past Thursdays and a question popped into your head and you'd like to get it answered, this would be a great time to do that. So we're in our open segment. Open questions, open topics, station. Please key up. Well, I didn't see anything come across that looked like there was anyone had any interest. And I forgot to mention, and this is more particularly for W4WWM, John K6PD, of course, slapped me around for claiming that the display name cannot be changed. In fact, it can, and he was able to, put that information up on the shout box, and I apologize for misleading people, but sometimes it's a fun thing to do. So, any questions about D-Star operation, about XRF, XLX, XRF reflectors? Were you chased from one net to this one because you couldn't get answers there? Is there a topic that's come to mind that you'd like to have dealt with? We'll take you now. Station, please begin. Alrighty, nothing seen or heard. Frankly, at this point, I am out of pre-planned topics, and this is just sometimes the way it works. So, anything that you guys would like to talk about, instead of formalizing it perhaps as a question or a topic. And by the way, if you have a topic or something you'd like to see the roundtable include, feel free to post it on the shout box after we clear it out every night at the conclusion of the roundtable, because it's open 24/7 and I look at it. Or you can send me an email, n6hkh@me.com, or find a way to communicate with me. Let's see, D-Star. I wonder how that would work. But you can try that. In the meantime, is there something you'd like to maybe spend a little time on hashing out that would be of interest to at least one or two people? What do you think? Please, Tia.
W4WWM.
W4WWM. Go ahead.
Okay, appreciate it again. And, well, one thing I haven't done, I haven't really got into the DMR gateway as of yet, and understand the enhancement to the DMR gateway. I think it was a very, very good idea from the very beginning. And now that the enhancement is coming, I guess I better download the gateway software and start playing around with it. I think that was one of John's notes there in his write-up. But my question to John is that when you think Jonathan will provide his first version of it? Sounds very interesting because it has become a great capability with the DMR gateway as being able to link with the 999 XLX reflectors. That just make it even the MEMDVM software even more powerful, or DMR gateway more powerful for actually creating our own decentralized network, W4WW.
Alrighty, so are you asking about if Naylor's going to publish an update to the MMDVM, or are you specifically questioning the anticipated update to DMR Gateway that we believe that Naylor is working on, or both, or none? Back to W4 WWM, go ahead.
Okay, well, basically the DMR gateway, but I wonder as well, and there's a reason I brought up the MMDVM, because it seemed like once he, I'm trying to remember when he first brought up the initial DMR gateway, did he also upgrade the MMDVM host, rather? And so if he upgraded the host, he apparently must have put out some new firmware, if that was the case. Why? Because he had to communicate with the DMR gateway in its certain configuration. So, it may be one host snap of changes. And but basically, for the most of any anticipated time frame, that the new coding of the DMR gateway, what is possible time frame you think you might put it out? W4WW.
K6.
Well, we may just have an answer. K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, well, DMR Gateway is currently in another branch on the GitHub. It's not on the main branch yet because Jonathan wants there to be a few reflectors. He wants it to be used first before making it, putting it on the main, the main branch on the GitHub. You can update DMR Gateway independent of MMDVM host, but it's probably just as easy to do both. And I think there was one bug that was reported with DMR Gateway that required host files to be modified a bit, and it's not clear right now at the moment where the host files come from, because the when you download the DMR masters from the XLX, what's called the XLX API server, it's not in the format and doesn't have all the parameters that the DMR gateway requires. Now, Adrian VK6TUX, posted actually in the Shoutbox last week so it's in Shoutbox history, a link. It's got some redundant entries in there, but Adrian mentioned that it was needed because of a current bug in DMR Gateway. So if you look at the link Adrian posted last week in the Shoutbox, and you can the GitHub has the DMR gateway on an experimental, and there's a post also that Jonathan made in MMDVM group, that a Yahoo group that describes it as well. So anyway, I guess no definite time frame on when it'll be available, but there's certainly nothing that prevents you from downloading it now and just realizing the what you may have to deal with the host file in the meantime. Back to Ned.
All right, so just to clear this up and also help those that might be thinking about putting or buying a multi-mode access point for hotspot, or who are running on their device just MMDVM. First, John, Naylor has not released, except experimentally, the latest version of DMR Gateway, which, if I can read between the lines, is worth waiting for. Unless there's nothing wrong with DMR Gateway, but DMR Gateway is available right now. So this experimental version of it, I'm not clear what the purpose of that being posted off of GitHub, but in a separate area, and why would anybody download that? Since I think DMR Gateway is available generally, just not the upgrades and the improvements that Naylor intends and is in fact writing into it, I believe, for a subsequent release. And in a prior roundtable, we went over, I believe, fairly extensively the improvements that were being sought. And so that's the first question I have for you, John. K680, go ahead.
Well, the reason people would download it, I wouldn't suggest everybody downloads it because it's still the experimental, but the reason, people download it, anything experimental, is because they want to be the first to try it, and they want to help shake it out so it does become available in the mainstream. So, I mean, that's the purpose. If nobody downloaded it, then there'd be no way to test it. So I think most people would probably prefer to just get one of the pre-made images that have the current DMR gateway, and then most likely, for most people, wait until the experimental one is ready to go and is included in an updated image, and just get it that way. It's for the people, the early adopters who are willing to go to extra effort and maybe encounter issues and advise the developers. So that's the purpose for both of them right now.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So now let's just say the DMR gateway is released, and even if it's a beta version, I mean, the updated one that we've been talking about hopefully will be produced soon. So do you need to also update MMDVM? Because that is the first layer of your hotspot. Now, the operating system image that you choose probably includes DMR gateway, I would think, but correct me if I'm wrong. But in any event, let's say you're a user MMDVM and you get DMR gateway, would you want to also update MMDVM at the same time you update DMR gateway? Is there any purpose to that? Back to K680.
No, that's not really necessary. I mean, some people will suggest that it's always good to get the latest version of both, but they function independently. The way, maybe I just describe a little bit about how DMR gateway works. Normally when you're running MMDVM, before any DMR gateway at all, you specify a DMR master, just one DMR master, and MMDVM interacts directly with that master. Okay, what DMR gateway, even the current one, does is it looks like a server. It's a middleman between MMDVM and the DMR masters. So as far as MMDVM is concerned, it's only talking with one DMR master, just as it always has. But instead of talking to an actual DMR master somewhere, it's DMR gateway is acting like the DMR master, and the DMR gateway itself is talking to the different masters. And so what that does, it does two things. It not only provides the capability to access multiple masters simultaneously, but it also enables you to remap talk groups so that, it's well and good to be able to access several masters, but if you couldn't remap the talk groups, then there would be complete confusion. Does a talk group go to one master versus another? So what DMR gateway also does is, in addition to mapping to several or communicating with several masters, it enables you to remap the talk groups so there is no ambiguity between what you have programmed in your radio and what master it ultimately goes through. So I guess that's a long way of saying no, you don't necessarily have to update both.
Got it. Thank you. Any questions? Please, Pia.
W4W.
W4WWM. Go ahead.
thanks, John. I definitely understand the concept, but it's really, really nice you put it out like you did. I'm sure others definitely appreciate that too. But let me throw another scenario. I like the concept of the gateways. It's just like the gateways to Fusion or the gateways to D-Star, talking to we call the servers or the masters. And it really, really takes the person who really want to get in there and get in between the nuts and the bolts and really design such a system as we talked about now. It's one of the reasons why we, or maybe some, wouldn't use the software like Pastar because it's already done a certain way. We want to be able to get in there and customize our system as we tinker. So, have you ever thought about, or anyone thought about separating the gateway, let's say, to another computer on your home network, and so therefore you have, just for general purposes or basically tinkering where the MMDVM will talk to the gateway, but it's on another computer within your home network. W4WWM.
Alrighty, volunteers.
K6K.
K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, well, I first might mention that, I understand if you like to get your hands dirty, the Pi-Star is probably not probably not your preferred image. I think it's great for a lot of people and they provide great support, but they make it bulletproof. And so if you're somebody who wants it bulletproof, then that's great. But if you're somebody that doesn't, then the bulletproofing is just a nuisance that you have to work around. So you can you can get all the software from scratch, but I might recommend also the KB5R8B image, and that's from Russell Biggs. I don't suppose he's probably doing a whole lot of updates now because he lives just outside Houston. So, and I think that is, for Will, you're probably familiar. There's information on that on another Facebook group called the Brandmeister Talk Group 3148. Now back to your question. I haven't put the DMR gateway on a separate machine, but I don't see any reason why you couldn't, because the way in which you specify DMR gateway is with MMDVM. Without DMR gateway, you would specify the IP address or the name of the DMR master. But if you're running if you're running DMR gateway and it's on the same machine, you would put in the loopback, IP address 127.0.0.1. So I haven't tried it, but I think it's probably a pretty good assumption that if you did want to put DMR gateway on another machine, you would instead of having the loopback 127.0.0.1, you would just put the IP address in that, where the address equals in the mmdvm.ini file. So kind of a little bit of a mouthful. Back to you, Mike.
Alrighty, W4WWM, any follow? Go ahead.
Okay, Mike, sure thing. Yeah, exactly. But here's where I get confused. I'm definitely actually tinkering around with something like that because of everyone likes the Raspberry Pi. I like the old droids, and I got a host of them in a small package and accumulate for even more powerful than the Raspberry Pi. So therefore, where the loopback goes, you would actually put the IP of the gateway in the IP of the gateway or the IP of the current machine where you're trying to link them to. W4WW.
All right. Stations, anything further? Or do you have a question about what you just heard? Please key up.
K6.
K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, well, in the MMDVM.ini, the address would be the IP address. Let's say if it's in your local LAN, it would be the local IP address of the machine where you actually have DMR Gateway running, and the DMR Gateway in turn would have the IP addresses of the external DMR masters. So I think but I haven't done that myself. It just seems, I'm pretty sure it would work that way. Anyway, back to net.
Stations, please key up.
W4.
W4WWM, go ahead.
Okay, real good. Thanks, Mike. And John, you just gave me a project. Thanks a lot for the information. It makes it more exciting. And gonna get in there and kick around a bit. I've started thinking about it because I got some more of the little small ARM computers sitting around not doing anything, and I figure I'll just put them to work. Not only that, I think it'd be a real neat little concept for the system. And you're absolutely right that Gateway is more or less looks like a server. Could be a master or a server. That I believe you can even remote that to even outside the local area network. But anyway, it's something I've been thinking about and looking at doing, and may have tried at one time or another, but was unsuccessful. But you just answered a very good question that I've been scratching my head on for a while, and that's pointing the gateway to the master. Now I got as far as pointing the gateway to the repeater or the gateway to the MMDVM host, and it didn't work. And I said, scratching my head and said, okay, well, there's got to be another combination of how this thing works. So you answer that, and we're definitely going to try it. We see a step that was possible, was unknown to myself. Anyway, appreciate it, and I guess we'll turn this back over to Mike and let him move on. Sorry to tie you up on that, but I think the DMR Gateway is pretty interesting, and I think I got a project hopefully for the weekend if I can convince the XYL to give me some time here. W4WW.
Well, I think getting some time from the XYL probably should be fairly easy. Just send her on a trip to the store or the shopping center with a credit card. This is the Thursday night D-Star Roundtable on the constellation of X reflectors in 688. So, let's see where we're at. We've exhausted topics. I don't have any other questions pending. I don't have anything coming in from the masses that require a discussion to be started. I don't have any questions pending. In fact, I don't have much at all pending right this minute. No stations have keyed up that have gone unanswered. At least I haven't failed to recognize anyone on purpose. So let me just generally ask if anyone has anything further for this net. Please key up.
K6JM.
K6JM, thanks for jumping in. Go ahead.
Okay, Mike. Good net tonight. I've been listening, doing some other stuff, but listening. Got a question, and I think it may be a dumb question, but I'm not 100% sure. So we'll find out. I'll state the question, and then I'll explain why I'm asking it. The question is basically, I'm looking for what are the best ways, or maybe just a way to when you're mobile and you're using your smartphone to create a Wi-Fi access point, which you've got a mobile hotspot of some sort that is using a Pi. And the question is, if the Pi software needs to be controlled somehow, what's the best way when you're mobile and away from the shack to log on to it, so to speak, and to control it? And the background is we know there are lots of different mobile hotspots out there, and I'm going to narrow this down to multi-mode, that is D-Star, DMR, C4FM, and so forth type mobile hotspots. We know about the OpenSpot, which is kind of self-contained and probably it would not need what I'm asking it. DV Mega with BlueStack, using Bluetooth to talk to an Android or a similar DV app on the phone or the mobile device. Let me reset. Another way to go is a DV Mega plugged into a Pi that's running an MDVM host software. Maybe you've loaded Pi-Star or KB5 RAB images on the Pi. A ZoomSpot, which, by the way, I don't have. I find they ran out, so I ordered it, and Bruce has ZoomSpots back finally in stock, and I just paid for one today, so next week I'll have a ZoomSpot, and I'm going to plug it into a Pi Zero wireless. So for those that have a Pi, it's got to have some sort of software. The question is, if I'm at home, fine, everything's on the internal network and it's easy to log on, but what do you do when you're mobile? And maybe I want to put the Pi-Star image on the Pi Zero wireless, and then I didn't want to control it. What do people do when they're mobile and away from their own router and internal network? Back to you, Mike. This is K6JM.
All right, Jim, and I assume that you're talking about doing so as your car is parked at the side of the road or in the hotel room and not having the capability driving 80 miles an hour down the freeway. Stations who can answer K6JM's question, please, Keith.
K6FED.
And we say hello to K6FED. Go ahead.
N6HKH in the group. This is K6FED. Well, you have two things that you mentioned. The first one I would probably consider would be running the let's say the Mega on the Pi, and you can use the IRC DDB gateway to control the Pi moving from one reflector to another. Let's just say on a fly. The IRC DDB gateway, bring it up on your cell phone, your tablet, or whatever, and then you can move around on reflectors like that as far as controlling the Raspberry Pi. the other option would be if you're using the Pi-Star software, you do a similar thing in that you'd make sure that both your Raspberry Pi and your phone or your tablet are on the same mobile network. And as long as you know the IP address of the Pi-Star software, you can bring up the web interface and control it from there. You just have to move to the admin screen and maybe tell it to change a reflector, or you might have to go in and tell it to shut off one of the modes. But that's the easiest way that I can think of, Mike. So back to net control. This is K6FED.
All right, Frank, we appreciate it. Well, it can be a complicated, thing as well, as long as it does what Jim would like it to do. But let's see where Jim's at. If that hits the mark, K6JM, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good point. And using the IRC DTP Gateway suite of programs, the remote control program, or the alternative, which has been written, which is that IRC DTP. I forget the name of it that you just said about a minute ago, but I have used both of them, the raw IRC remote control program and the other one that you mentioned. And of course, with the Pi-Star, most of the data, the Pi-Star just takes a browser. And the trick there, as you pointed out, is just to know the IP. And when you're mobile, that's a bit of a trick. I've done it, so I'll have to dig that out. But it's just like I have everything figured out how to run my life with all these different devices from within my shack with my own router, my own internal network, and I get a little bit lost when I'm mobile, and so I was just looking for that. But I think what I take out of K6FED's answer is use software that you can control from a web browser, and then run that on your mobile device, your tablet or your smartphone. So that's good. Appreciate it. Back to you, Mike, K6JM.
Anyone else with a suggestion for K6JM, please key up.
W6OSO.
W6OS.
And we welcome Mike. Let's try this again. We welcome Mike. W6OSO. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mike and the group. Either I mistook the question, or I'm totally baffled, because they're talking about Pi-Star. They're talking about using a desktop like on a tablet or a computer. That's all great, but the D-Star Commander makes it operational right from the radio. You either use the DTMF commands to change your reflectors. Once you set it up with the Wi-Fi, it doesn't need anything more. It goes right into your hotspot and then right out to the internet. Am I missing something, or did I miss the memo on the latest and the greatest? Back to you, Mike.
K6.
Well, I think K6FED is going to fill you in on what you missed and why what you suggested wouldn't work in the scenario. The K6JM, that is the description of his hotspot. K6FED, go ahead.
N6HKH in the group, this is K6FED. More or less, the reason why you would actually want to use another piece of software, whether it's Pi-Star or the IRC DTP, is, let's say, for example, you you hear about a net, but it's not programmed in your radio and your mobile. With the IRC GDB gateway software, if you don't have that reflector programmed in your radio, you can easily bring it up on the IRC GDB gateway. And as long as your radio is on talk, it matters whether or not it doesn't matter if the reflector is programmed in your radio. You can still use it using the IRC GDB gateway software. And the same goes for the Pi-Star software. If you're mobile and you need to access a reflector that's not in your radio, you can actually bring it up on your in the software. And as long as your radio is on talk, you still should be able to talk on that reflector. So that's I granted you are able to control the radio via RF because of the different pieces of software. But let's just say there's a scenario where you don't have that reflector programmed in the radio. That gives you a certain amount of control, and then plus, it also allows you to shut those things down. So that's the other benefit. To add to that, if there's a QSO going on and you need to change reflectors, you can't do it unless that QSO stops. But with the software, you can actually move to another reflector without having to wait for the QSO to be over. M6HKH and the group, this is K6FED, back to you.
Hey, appreciate it, Frank. Well, so does D-Star Commander as an operating system image work in the MMDVM environment? Who can answer, stations? Please be up.
K6J.
K6JM, go ahead.
Okay, well, that's a good point, like W6OS. So, if you're only going to do D-Star while you're mobile or in a hotel or something, D-Star Commander is the solution, just no question. Although, K6FED is pointing out that there are some things that are tough to do with the radio commands if there's no way to get in and get the attention of the software. So there is that. I didn't frame my question quite right, or I didn't do a good job of it. I was talking about multi-mode hotspots. So whereas IRC Gateway's remote control program and clones of it do a good job of being able to use another computer to control linking. For D-Star, I was thinking about how do you do the other modes. So if I want to do some changes with DMR or something, and Blue DV will do that. But I'm reading. There's some flaws in Blue DV. That is not flaws, but some things it just isn't designed to do, and it doesn't support RF control of your connections, for example. So I kind of am leaning towards Pi-Star or KP5RAD images on the Pi, and then the question becomes, what do you do? I think the answer for multi-mode is what K6FED says, which is figure out the IP address of the Pi on your little smartphone access point, and then use Pi-Star and your mobile phone's browser or your tablet's browser. I think that's the answer that I was looking for. But absolutely for D-Star only, D-Star Commander is a pretty complete solution. Back to you, Mike. K6JM.
K6FE.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. And it's not always, especially for those that are new to MMDVM, for the purpose of operating in modes including, but other than D-Star. K6FED, go ahead.
N6HKH in the group. One more thing I'd like to add, because Jim did mention, for some of us, it's a little bit of a challenge to figure out the IP address of what's attached to your hotspot. But what I have on my cell phone is an app called Ping, and as long as if you wanted to know the IP address that is actually given out, let's say the IP address that the hotspot is giving out, you would just run the Ping application, and it'll tell you everything that's on that network, as long as they're both connected to the same network. So it's not that much of a challenge as far as figuring out the IP address. And the application is called no, it's not Ping. It's called FING. Thing. Over.
Frank, we missed the correction. So it's spell out the correct app name. You got cut off a bit. K6FED, go ahead.
Roger that. Sorry about that, Mike. It's Foxtrot, India, Nancy, Golf. Fing. Foxtrot, India, Nancy, Golf. Over.
Got it. Fing to do the ping. Real good. Further on this subject, please key up.
K6JM.
K6JM, go ahead.
Well, this is what this net is all about. People have questions, and then other people have answers. And my badly framed question really resolved down to how do I find the IP address of my Pi that's using my smartphone's little Wi-Fi access point. And K6FED said go get, in my case, an Android version of Fing. And I'm looking at it on the internet here, and it's just perfect for what I want to do. So this is what this net is all about. People have questions. I just got my answer. Thanks very much. Back to you, Mike. This is K6JM.
Of course. Well, that's what we're here for. And sometimes as we talk about a particular question and we roll around a bit in it, it helps those that perhaps just don't understand quite where we're at, and those that have been around for a while and know very well what you're talking about. It's a refresher. And Fing is fairly well known, I think, to most people. It's a way of scanning and managing, and I think it also troubleshoots networks. So you can use that app, which I'm just checking. Yeah, it's both the App Store for iOS and Google Play for the analog folks. There is a subscription that's available, but it's a free app. I think there's just if you're troubleshooting a major cabling installation involving some sort of network that involves security, perhaps you might want to pay for that. But short of that, the free app works pretty well. I have it installed. I just don't use it a lot, but for the few times I have, it did work well. Thank you to everybody. So let's see where we're at. I'm out of stations and, frankly, out of things to talk about. So, station, please key up. Well, didn't get a response. What is it that we failed to bring up or talk about tonight? Is there a question that you thought you might have answered based upon the list of some of the topics that was sent on our weekly email announcing the net? By the way, if you want to get an email notice of the net and some of the topics, be sure to go to the Roundtable Forum board, which I'm sure everybody's at already, but you'll see a place about halfway down that says click here to receive Roundtable newsletters. And we have a newsletter about ready to launch by email. But you can get the flyer, and it's worth doing. It's sent out in a way that informs but shouldn't intrude too much, and occasionally we actually try to inform in the flyer, and often we try to be humorous just to not only have clicks, but people give them something to take a look at. So, with that, where are we at? What do you need to hear from us? What do we not talk about? What is it that you want to talk about? Let's do it. Stations, please be up.
W6OSL.
W6OS.
Hey, Mike, I hope you don't think I left you in the dust. I thought the question was answered, but it doesn't matter. W6OSL, go ahead.
Yes, it was answered. We were talking apples and oranges, I guess. They were talking like Pi-Star and the KV5RAB image, which I'm not familiar with. And I'm thinking, well, if you want to control it all, D-Star or D-Star Commander is the way to go. It's kept up pretty well by both John and Bob, and I can't see any faults with it. I've been using it for years. And Jim admitted that it was a good software, but I understand now where he's coming from. So that's done. Purpose for the call, let me break. I want to stay ahead of that infamous timer on the repeaters. Want to talk about emergency radio. We had talked about that a few weeks ago prior to the water sports they've had down in Houston. And now that seems to have subsided. And we have two more storms coming along the East Coast and along Florida. In thinking back on the last week, I tried to monitor some of the D-Star reflectors for that area. Very little talk. Analog, of course, is really out of the question unless they go IRLP. HF was very nominal, but I found that a lot of people are using a new app that I had never heard of called Zello, Z-E-L-L-O. Let me break. Zello app converts any phone, iPhone, Android phone, you name it, it's on the web. And we had talked about this, I think, 2 weeks ago. And it turns your phone into a walkie-talkie, and there's chat rooms like the Houston chat room, the Corpus Christi chat room, and they have interactive maps and things to help workers get services to an area that's in need. It's open to anybody. You don't need a map. You don't need a license. You don't have to be a ham. And I guess the question that's taken a long time to get to is, what is the future of amateur radio and disaster services with these new apps coming on board? Any thoughts that you might offer? I'd be happy to hear them. Back to you, Mike.
Well, I take it that you were not listening to the roundtable from the beginning, because we covered that A to Z to the extent that it was pertinent. We talked about emergency communications, Harvey, Irma, Zillow, and a number of other issues. And as you can well imagine, going over that territory again is going to get me in hot water. And it probably would be best if you downloaded the podcast and listened to the first hour or so. I don't think we quite made it. Well, it didn't last an hour, but listen to the first segment, and as well as actually a significant part of last Thursday's roundtable, in which all of that you just requested was discussed. I'm sure that once Irma comes and goes, that by next Thursday we'll have some reports. We've got a regular, just a minute. We have a station that participates fairly regularly at the roundtable that is actually, let's see, what's the word? Embedded in Orlando, doing some work for FEMA, NOAA, and hopefully he'll be able to provide us some reports as time goes by, and he has time if there's anything to report. So maybe by next Thursday we'll be able to know more and perhaps get another report on whether Zillow was put to use by anybody there. I mean, the fact that the Cajun Navy used it in Louisiana and Texas doesn't mean necessarily that it's the best way to go. In Florida, there has to still be some infrastructure available. So I'm sorry to say, Mike, thanks for bringing up an interesting topic. Just a little bit too late, but we understand that. Anything further, W6OSL?
No, we had a club meeting that ran over tonight, so I didn't get home until about 8:30, and then I had to get a prescription filled for my wife. So I tuned in about 9, and apologies, I didn't know it was already covered. I was just responding to requests for something new, and I didn't know if it had been talked about or not. So I'll get the podcast. And with that, thank you. W6OSO.
No problem. Just assign yourself 7 demerits, and that should take care of it for the day. All right, stations, anything further for this edition of the Thursday Night D-Star Roundtable? Not that we are looking to close, but it seems that it may be time to consider that. At the same time, it's hard to tell because I can't tell what's on your mind unless you key up and tell us. So, station, please key up.
This is Zulu Lima 1, Hotel November, Brian in Hamilton, New Zealand. Good evening to everybody.
Hey, Brian, ZL1HN. Thanks for joining us. Good evening to you. Anything for the net? Go ahead.
Not specifically. I am playing with Yaesu Fusion. One of the disappointing factors is that the Wires Xbox cannot be used as a data modem. What I'm saying is that if you take a D-Star modem and you set up an analog radio like a Kate or a Motorola, it will transmit the D-Star digital format. Much to the disappointment, I bought a Wires Xbox thinking I was going to be able to do the same thing, to find out you cannot. It will only transmit analog. Sure, it'll convert the analog to digital for the internet link, and I believe it'll take it out the other end where it can convert it to digital if the other end has got a dedicated Yaesu digital radio. So I thought that was a bit of a downer. Over.
Did you keep your receipt?
Yeah, felt like that. That's the downside of being in New Zealand here. You've got to import it. It's a very costly exercise to send it back over.
Well, at least you know, and you've let others know. I haven't heard of anyone thinking about, checking it out as you did, but I'm glad you did, and it wasn't me. And, I guess there's always a purpose to have a Wires Xbox on the standby at all times. I can't think of any reason why, but still, you never know. All right, Brian, appreciate it. I'm glad you jumped in. Stations, please key up.
I was going to add to
ZL1H N KE9GI.
All right, so I guess I doubled with Brian. I thought he was done, but when I unkeyed, I heard him still talking, but I couldn't recognize what he was saying, so he'll be next up. And I also recognize KB9GIG. So ZL1HN. We didn't get what you had to say in the last part because I talked over you because I thought you were done. ZL1HN, go ahead.
Roger there, Mike. Oh, sorry about that. These things happen. I was just saying the MMDVM is certainly becoming of age in respect to being able to successfully transmit the different data requirements for Yaesu Fusion, D-Star, and DMR. We've certainly seen some real development happening in that area, in these open spots, etc. So it's not all doom and gloom. It's just a shame that a Yaesu modem is not at all as flexible as some of these aftermarket devices, which proves that the amateurs and their R&D are doing better than the big giants in the field. So with that, I'll make that my last comment. Good to hear. I do listen. And I've been listening since you started there. So 73 from Hamilton, New Zealand.
Thanks for joining us, Brian, and that was 100%. We say hello to KB9GIG. Go ahead.
Sure, Mike. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet everybody on the net. This is my first time checking in, but I just wanted to say I wanted to respond on that, on the user request, talking about the IRC DDB remote program for the iPhones and tablets and stuff. I use it quite a bit. The reason why is because I'm using a non-standard system here. I'm using a Yaesu FTM400 XDR with the D-Star in the B side, and then that way I've got analog and fusion in the A side. Makes for a nice, neat little package, but the D-Star adapter I'm using is a little bit of a bear to program. Even though it has 1,000 memories times 3, it's still, you got to hook it to the computer to program it. And then you don't need the computer afterwards. And to me, it's a lot easier just to use my little iPhone or my tablet and tap in the reflector I want to go to and be done with it. Also, it makes it easy if I take the adapter into my truck and plug it into my little FT100. It's in my truck. And I don't have to worry about fiddling with the box while I'm driving. I can just leave my tablet open on the IRC DDB remote program, and it will let me change reflectors as I need to. Also on the F-Ping program, somebody mentioned a program called F-Ping, or F-Ping, I think it's called. There's also a program called Netgear Genie, which is a free download, and it is a very good program. Even if you don't have a Netgear router, it will identify the IP address. Now, it's good for PCs. I don't know if they make it for Android device or anything, but if you need to ID your IP addresses of all your equipment on your network, it's a very good program with. And thanks for letting me check in, Mike, and nice to meet everybody.
Well, I appreciate you keying up and helping us out on our topic. Yeah, you know, IRC-DDB is IRC-DDB remote is a cool program. It's very popular, and it makes life a lot easier, and it's fairly easy to use, quite frankly. Yeah, the Netgear, you know, the device maker, the program Netgear Genie, actually it is available as a app on Apple. And no doubt it's available for Android, but certainly you can, you know, load it up on your PC. In fact, if you get like a Netgear router, although as John points out, it's good for other things. And it's a fairly decent program for a freebie. But when you install a new router that's made by Netgear or a switching device for your internet service, Ethernet within the house and for Wi-Fi, well, you guys know Netgear anyway. usually it loads up on the PC. I don't think there's a Mac version available, but the Netgear Genie Apple iOS app is pretty trick, and it's pretty fun. In fact, I just fired it up just for, you know what. And it covers Wi-Fi and network map. It's got parental controls, traffic meter, share, turbo transfer, QR scanner, remote access, remote. You can reboot the router just by looking at it. And in fact, this is a update because it's got a new landing page here. So the Netgear Genie is a good one, suggested for its purpose. But it doesn't control. Well, that's fine. Stations, please, Kia.
W6OSO.
W60.
W6OSO, go ahead.
Yeah, the gentleman that was talking about Wires X or Wires 2 hit a spot on something I saw just the other day. I belong to the Fusion Yahoo group, and there was an article put out by Yaesu and Cerritos regarding the new DR2 repeater. They talked about some of the enhancements that were made, some of the things that had been done in the firmware, but one of the major things that stuck out that I saw was it is not compatible with D-Star in any way, shape, or form. They were talking about plugs and pins on the back, and I saw that to be interesting because they were selling these things so darn cheap to begin with. I know a lot of them had been converted to D-Star repeaters, and now Yaesu's put the cork in that hole. So that might be something that if somebody has better information than I, might want to pass on to the group. Back to you, Mike.
All right. Anyone have any further comment on W6OSO's observations? Please keep up.
W4
W4WWM. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll take a shot at the Wires X topic. I believe the gentleman there from New Zealand made a comment concerning the Wires X box, the little blank box. And he tried to hook it up to, I believe, Analog Radio, which gave him Analog Wires X. I did the same thing. I have one of those boxes too, but in that place you could use the Wires X part of the MMDVM and get into the Offbeat Yaesu Fusion network. But you still can use that box to get that hooked up. You can put that box in operation without a radio connected up, and know someone like a sysop operator like myself with Grandmaster, and we could link you to that Wires X box so you can listen to some of those rooms on that Wires X system, and therefore your box won't become a paperweight. So there you go. Another way to get slightly around it, but yet you got to go through a couple more loops, and to get it to work, at least to say get some type of use out of it. But that's it. But as far as those boxes, yeah, you're correct. Station is correct. They come out with Wires X 2 or Fusion 2, whatever, and change a different interface to it, a little module that fits inside that box. So you won't, of course, in the format of the new type repeater, the Yaesu repeater, you can't really use the unit like most of the time they were using it before. by making it Fusion or MMDVM type repeater. I guess you really want you to use it the way they design it, and that's about it. That's the reason. It seems like most of the thing that had to come out with a second version of Yaesu Fusion because their repeater program really went in a different direction. W4WW.
Yes, or better yet, just wave off purchasing the Virus X box. And in light of, Yaesu updating the software and through that obsoleting a number of its radios just by saying, well, we're going to go to Fusion 4. We're not going to tell you what it's going to do entirely, but if you have an older Fusion radio or device, forget it, it won't work. You have to buy a new one. Too bad for you. If you have a more recent one, maybe the firmware will update it. So Fusion's good for obsolescence, and you might not even have to worry about Wires X because there's going to be probably a Wires X Gen 3 that you'd have to purchase. Buyer beware. Thanks, Will. Stations, please, yeah. Anything further for the Thursday night D-Star Roundtable? Or if you keyed up and you weren't recognized, I didn't do it on purpose. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes it double flips in, and I may not notice it. We certainly want to get you here in the net, so feel free to key back up and say, hey, you didn't call on me, so I can call on you. Final thoughts? Station, please, yeah. All right, given that there was no response to anything I had to say, I think we'll call it a night for this edition of the Thursday Night D-Star Roundtable. I'd like to thank every station that keyed up and participated, because without your participation, there would be no roundtable. And of course, those that the stations that work hard on keeping the Kings of Digital system, which includes the constellation of X reflectors and the nets which participate here, for doing what they do, because there's no way that one person can do it all. Now the shout box will be moved to the shout box history, so that if you're listening by recording, you'll be able to go back and see what we were talking about. It's open 24/7. Feel free to throw things on there of one-shot basis. If you'd like to start a discussion based upon what you've heard on the net, especially if it's something relatively current, please go to the current discussions folder, where it'll be saved, and you could use it, post and reply as you would expect for that kind of continuing discussion. And once they're closed off, we move them elsewhere. The podcast should be ready to go early tomorrow for me being Friday. And please feel free to, and I suggest that you check out the other nets which appear on the constellation, including the 100 watts and a wire net, Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, posted by VE6DV, and the D-Star Users Group that I think is generates from Facebook, but those guys have a net at 6 p.m. Mountain as well, but on Saturdays here on the constellation of X reflectors. And there are other nets I mentioned at the beginning of the roundtable, part of announcements, that there's a German D-Star net, but they're actually holding it on a different reflector that is connected to us fairly persistently. So it's just there, but it doesn't mean you can't join in if you speak German. And there are other nets that are being worked on that we hope to incorporate here in the constellation of X reflectors. And if you have a net that you'd like to place on either modulated time or in one of the other multitude of modules in our group of XRF and XLX reflectors, feel free to let us know of suggestions you may have. Just email me, n6hkh@me.com. And if I can't deal with it, it'll be forwarded to the appropriate King's Digital System person to take care of it. And as Hurricane Irma encroaches, if you think about it and would like to give an update here on the constellation, we'd like to hear it. And if you choose to just post it on the shout box, that would be fine too. Of course, it's better to talk on DeepStar. And, feel free to, of course, stop in on the constellation during the week. There's usually friendly folks around. We talk all kinds of things, not necessarily just amateur radio, but we venture off into other topics where no one is permitted to take offense. It's all fun. So if you do have anything going on with Irma, or you think that there's a fun place to listen, if Zello, which is has nothing to do with amateur radio, and it may or may not be used. I mean, there's a limit to its use, but it is fun listening. Or if there's a reflector to listen to during the course of that disaster, which appears to be shoring up to be bad, let us know. We can all listen in. So, with that, everybody have a great weekend. Enjoy Sunday football if you're so inclined as football season started. I appreciate those that chose to listen and participate in the roundtable as opposed to being glued to the boob tube just for the purpose of Thursday night football. But I understand. At least you spend some time with us, and that's important. So I got to take a break. I'll be back here a little bit later, and certainly over the weekend because I'm not going anywhere. Everybody, have a great time. Talk to you on the E-Star, N6HK. Good night.
K6JD. Correction. Well, John, you still listening? Yeah, I guess not. W4WW not. Oh. FED, K6 FED. Still, are you listening?
W4WWM. Good evening to you, Will. Hopefully everything's going well. Over.
Roger, Roger. Everything's going great. How you doing out that way? Surprised to hear you in there. I just checked in myself for the first time. Quite neat. You must be a regular here, right? W4WW.
I try to be, Will. Listening to a lot of the input from the different guys coming from different parts of the country and the world. It just kind of adds to the knowledge base, especially when it comes to these digital modes. I started listening to Mike and the rest of the guys, I think a couple of years back, and every once in a while I just try to, make some type of contribution, because I know they work hard at keeping things going, and it seems to work out pretty good. You pick up a little bit of knowledge here and there, and it's nice to be able to go in and throw a question out there and get an answer. So I really enjoy it. Over.
Oh yes, indeed. Yeah. I did some of that myself tonight. Pick up the information and keep going. Yeah, we've been seeing you on the net there with on the quad net with the is it my TV? So that product you're enjoying is that right?
Yeah, I really like it, Will, because I built it from scratch. So I got two screens on it, one for controlling it and the other one for actually watching who's calling. And the biggest challenge was just finding a case for it, but it was nice to break out the soldering iron and put it together, which didn't really take that long. And then plus I got a real microphone on it. So now my next challenge is I think I'm going to get rid of some of my mobile radios, and I'm going to put a detachable face on it, or a detachable head, and I'm going to start to use it as a mobile system. Over.
Yeah, okay, well, that's great. Yeah, I was looking at it a little bit, and I said, man, this thing can replace a mobile. But you would use it in the mobile through the cell systems, right?
Yeah. Yeah, all I do is, because that's the way it kind of runs now. It runs off the house Wi-Fi, but since the Raspberry Pi is the main controller of it, I just tell the Raspberry Pi. I'm using